Welcome to the Woke Wild Women podcast. I am Bethany Evans, and this is my co-host,
Roxanne Sailors in Bellingham, Washington.
Thank you so much for joining us. I guess I'm in Camarillo, California now because I just moved, which is near LA. So, yes, thank you guys for joining us today. What are we going to talk about today? We are going to wrap up our winter season and transition into spring. And so we're going to talk about what we discovered about ourselves and our podcast and how things went for us during winter, and then how it is springing us into spring.
Yes. And what is on the horizon for us, for the podcast, and for the world?
Yes, there's lots happening collectively, globally, that is affecting all of us. So we'll touch a little bit on that, but we don't want to spend too much time there. But we're here for support for whatever, you guys are experiencing. That's the whole purpose, of our podcast, that what we wanted, the whole vision of why we decided to create this was to create community virtually, since Roxanne and I can't be together in person. So we're like, well, we can connect with everybody all over the world and stay connected and build that community with like-minded women and others, men too, if they're interested. Yes.
Yeah. And we've been talking a lot about what we want for the podcast and for the community. And we'll talk more about that coming up. But first, let's take a look back for a moment with
memory lane.
Yes. Spring is almost here. And for the most part, we're through the worst of the winter.
Exactly.
The deepest, I shouldn't say the worst, but the deepest of the winter. And Bethany and I both went through some transitions. Bethany, why don't you start telling your story of what you did this winter?
No, it's a good question. I didn't prepare because now I'm like, what did I do this winter? I'd say, when did winter start? Just so I could get
just right before Christmas.
Okay.
So December 21st.
Yeah, I was preparing myself for moving. So I knew at that time I was going to move, and that's something I had been working on, or, looking to create for myself and finding opportunities and wanting to create that space for a while, for like basically the entire year. Even before this started like a couple of years ago. I was like, I need to find a place to live. So I think it was maybe November when I finally found where I was going to go. And so I was prepping myself for that. And, so with that came a lot of like, things are going to be changing, having to close out certain situations, like within the environment I already lived in. Then a lot of money stuff came up for me, because it was like, okay, well, I'm going to be paying a lot more for rent than I was already. And so wanting to make sure. So I got really deep into my money shit, what else? Like noticing where I derive stability from, stability and security. And I realized that having the environment I'm in, like having a home, is one of the things that really makes me feel safe and secure. And for up until that point, I had relied on other people to, and not that I'm not anymore, but I noticed that like I relied on other people to provide that for me, like to be there with me for that support. Like I've never lived on my own. And I knew that going into, even though I knew I was going to have roommates for the first month or so, I knew I was going to be living on my own in a brand new house. And so that was something that was really scary for me. So it brought up a lot of fears about, am I capable? Do I deserve this? Am I worthy? That kind of thing too, because it was something I had worked so hard for, like putting all of my energy into creating it. And then it just kind of like showed up in my lap. Like, here you go. Look at this. Everything you wanted in a house and like in roommates and everything. It was just like, hey, here you go. Dropped right into my lap. And there was an element of it being too good to be true. Like, is it going to fall through? Those fears were coming up. So yeah, I noticed how I relate to being happy also. Like, I knew it was something that was going to make me feel really good, and I almost didn't trust it. yeah, so that was, I think, the biggest thing that I was going through. And then in turn, because I was focusing on all of my money stuff, I was then like, well, I got to start like, doing all these things, creating a structure for my business and trying to get new clients. And that became my focus. And then like, you know, being at like going to Roxanne and being like, we got to do this and we got to do that. And we got to try this and we got to do all this stuff to make our podcast grow and all of that. Um, yeah. So I kind of was like going with all of those things happening underneath, like below the surface, all of those fears, all of those, I don't know, just unconscious ways I related to those things, money, and it really was about security and stability, uh, and realizing that I needed to look within myself first to find that security and stability, and not that but then also not making it wrong that money and having a home of my own also makes me feel safe and secure.
Yeah.
So much of all of that. And then my birthday's in January, so that too, going into a new year, and then being, turning 33. And I've never been big on like celebrating myself and being like, I'm gonna do this for my birthday. It's my birthday week or it's my birthday month. Like I'm just kind of like, it's my birthday. Like, so realizing how, I think it's just a lot of looking at myself from an outside perspective of like, like how I handle things, and how like maybe like I think like seeing how other people handle things, like what's quote unquote normal or majority of people. And I'm like, I really do things a lot differently than people do. Like, yeah, anyway, so I was going. I ended up getting sick, really sick that week of my birthday, or the week before my birthday. So that was another thing too. It like kind of, it caused me to, not be able to work as much as I had wanted to. But the whole reason was I wasn't resting enough too. So I noticed that I was like, in this time, winter is like what our hibernation period. So we're supposed to be resting, and I wasn't allowing myself that time to rest. So I got really sick, and I was forced to do it, which was helpful. But it also, I think, again, it goes back to what I was learning, which was you got to find that security and stability within yourself first, and make sure you're feeling good before you're trying to attract these things like more money, more clients. And so it was all about where I was coming from when I was attempting to do those things. So, yeah. And realizing it was all conditioned stuff in my environment and people in my environment, my family, like where I adopted these beliefs, about whatever it was, money, living on my own, feeling capable. That's a really big thing that I've noticed about myself.
Yeah.
Feeling capable of doing everything on my own. I want to like beat myself down and tell myself I'm not, I know it's just the codependent dynamics that I've learned, in that when someone like my mom is the savior, she wants to save everybody. So that makes you like, when somebody's doing that and constantly trying to take care of you or try to do things for you, you at some point think like, oh, like I must not be capable then, like I think I created that view of myself. If she feels like, or if somebody's like, oh, I'll just do it for you, or, oh my, like if I didn't do it right, that was another thing too, is my mom's very particular and wants things done a certain way. And so then if you don't do it that way, it's wrong. And so then you start thinking like, oh, I must not be doing it right, and I must not be capable of doing it right. So yeah.
And that's, it's a pretty normal dynamic, I think.
Yeah.
That's part of the evolution. But yeah. And you also, the logistics of actually moving.
Yes.
Packing up all your shit and taking it across town.
Yes.
And, setting up a new home. That's a big transition that I think, we tend to gloss over, especially because we are so much more mobile as a species than we used to be. I know people that move every year.
Yeah. Wow. They must not have a lot of stuff, because my God, so. You realize how much shit you have when you move.
Think about it, college students,
Yeah, but they don't have a lot. Like they're not, they're coming from a family home, most likely, to where, I had a bunch of house stuff already, because I had lived with my husband and then moved into my family's house, and then had like all that stuff in boxes in the garage. And so then like, I love what you had said, because it reminded me that like, we think about the beginning and the end, like the point A to point B of moving, right? We don't really think about how it's going to be in between, which is the
chaos.
yeah. And then also like the going through all your stuff,
So
finding things.
emotional.
Yeah. We have emotional ties to material things, no matter if you agree with that or not. We do, like, we attach meaning to material things. And so it was like, some of it's really great to like get rid of stuff, and then some of it you're like, I'm holding on to this because I don't want to get rid of it, because it has some kind of sentimental value. And so then again, like, it was bringing up a lot of stuff. Like, I did so much healing, and I feel like had some closure and completion with like my marriage, and that whole phase of my life through that, because I had packed up stuff from the home that we lived in together. And so there was a lot of pictures. And so then I was like, unwrapping things, and it was like pictures of us and things I had just left, just packed and didn't think about, wasn't ready to get rid of yet. Right.
Yeah.
And a lot, a lot of stuff. And I realized that it helped me process a lot of stuff. I got to spend a lot of time nesting and being in my own space and creating my own space, which I'm not used to really having. And, being a mom sometimes and having a codependent conditioning, for me, it's giving up myself for other people. And so it was like, you get to create all of this yourself, like your space, what you want, and decorate the way you want. And no one's there to tell you that it's wrong, or you have to consider, I mean, I have to consider my son, obviously, but no one really you don't have to consider anyone else really until your roommates move in, but that's another thing. So yeah, it was a lot of processing things. I know that the timing was perfect for that. Being able to, obviously, for one, have the winter break off from work, from my teaching job, which is helpful. And then, like I said, I think just the timing of it was, it's time to fully heal and close out this chapter of your life. And that's like what I was doing. So yeah, it was emotional and really difficult and exhausting, but also really, really wonderful at the same time. Like, so much simultaneous endings and all of that stuff that comes with it, and then beginnings and all the stuff that comes with it. So the sadness and then the excitement also. So being with all of it at the same time.
Yeah. And that's what transitions are, really. It's rare that you're only experiencing one emotion or one experience in a given time. You're constantly overlapping beginnings and endings, and transitions are those crossroads where everything kind of comes together, and you get to kind of sift through it and see how you end up in the end.
Yes, exactly. Yeah. You learn a lot about yourself and what you're able to handle during it, and and whatnot, and setting those boundaries for yourself too, like saying no to things. Yeah. Or asking for support too, like having to ask people that, hey, can you help me move? Can you help me put this couch together? Can you help me do these things? So yeah, it was a huge transition, and I'm still transitioning. Like, I'm still, like, I just unpacked the last box I had.
And you still have another roommate to move in.
Yes. And we're interviewing for another roommate. So yeah. So then I'm living with one of my high school best friends, which is really cool. And I'm also like living in my high school hometown right next to my high school, like literally. So it's bringing up there's a lot of closure and like new perspectives of things, of who I used to be back then. And maybe like the way I used to see things, and like not relating to myself like that anymore. Like, I had a very difficult time in high school, like relating to myself as like I didn't belong there. Because this particular town's a little bit more, what's the word I'm looking for? I don't know. I guess upper middle class, I guess. Whereas like my hometown, or like where I'm from, and also like we grew up being kind of poor, and just a very scarcity mindset. I never related to the people that lived in this town, because it was like they're all wealthy and big houses, and I never had that as a kid. So I had a lot of stories around that. that I've, coming back here, I noticed, and I'm like, well, yeah, I can be in this energy, and it actually feels good to be in this energy. It's like shifting from a scarcity mindset to an abundance mindset.
Yeah, that's huge.
And realizing like, you do fit in here, you do belong here. Whereas before, when I was in high school, I did not feel like that at all. I felt like nobody understands me. Like everyone's parents have like nice jobs and houses, and they're married still. And I just, I was coming from a really difficult, the complete opposite. I felt like I didn't feel like I could relate to people. So now that I'm here, I'm like, look at all this stuff that I've done for myself, and that I did it all on my own, and that I didn't need my family to, like, of course they supported me in some ways, but I didn't need my family to give me that money or give me that big house, and I'm still able to, have that type of energy and vibration that is abundant, So a lot of just opening myself up to a more abundance, it felt like.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
It's a really nice house.
Yes, it's beautiful. It's brand new.
Lovely.
Yes. Roxanne got to come and stay with me, which was really cool. She was my first guest, and and then my roommate just moved back. She's been here since, or only a week. She's only been here a week. It feels like longer, but that's not in like a bad way.
Just a lot's happened in a week.
Right.
A lot has happened this week.
More transitioning, like, so Kingston's now dealing with the transition of, first we moved into this new house. Then it was just us. Then it was like, he's getting all these new things, like getting a new bed, and so dealing with his emotional stuff, like that kind of roller coaster of like all the new, can be a lot sometimes. So then transitioning, so then they came back, and then they've been away for a couple of years in Afghanistan. So now, so they're having friends come over a lot, and be here. And so then he's like, are there friends here? And he doesn't want to, like, he's not the most open child to where he wants to interact with brand new people all the time.
Yeah, he's shy.
He's shy, and he's particular about who he opens up to. He has to feel comfortable with you first. So it was just so much transition, and then now we have another room that we're looking for another roommate. So that's gonna be another transition. So yeah, lots of transitioning in winter for me. Yeah. So what about you, Roxanne? What was going on for you?
What was going on for me? Well, start around the holidays, which are typically difficult for me. And it was funny. This winter, I think we had a nice low-key Christmas celebration season. Everything went smoothly. I've been transitioning in work. So I was not unemployed, but underemployed right around the holidays. And so, we love being able to spend lots of money on our kids to get them, not just like cool stuff, but to like really support them because I wasn't able to pay for college or, help them with a nest egg or anything like that. But, in exchange, Eric and I are committed to making sure that they're, loved, cared for, and supported in as many ways as we can. And so when we have extra money, we gift it to them. I've taken both my kids on vacations and things like that. So it was, it was one of kind of a humbling Christmas this year. Things were small, but my kids are also 27 and 28 now. And so a lot of the stuff that they want, my kids make way more money than I do. So it's like, if they really want something cool, they can buy it themselves. And so really what we spent our time or our efforts on was creating good experiences. And so from that perspective, it was really nice. I didn't have the usual kind of, I get really melancholy around the holidays. Just really, it's just a very emotional time for me. And I didn't experience that, but I was experiencing, like, I was much more quiet and slow. My health has not been what it usually is. I just was feeling so monumentally run down after, I got really burned out in my job, and I had quit my job in July. So I'd been gone for long enough to kind of let that piece dissipate. But then I was called back to work. So
when was that?
That was actually before the winter. That was in October through January. So I was working there through the holidays. And then I got kind of abruptly, not let go, but we had an agreement that I would I would stay and train the new person. It's a long story and it doesn't bear repeating here.
Mm-hmm.
But so it just kind of abruptly, it was like after Christmas, and then my birthday is January 8th. And I've always been like, nobody wants to celebrate after Thanksgiving. And I have
Christmas and New
5
Year's.
Christmases and then New Year's, and everybody's on their new diets, and they're like,
Right.
you know, and it's cold and it's dark and it's, you know, anyway. So, you know, those things kind of went by as usual. And then when I quit working at my outside job, I was suddenly like not doing nothing, but it was just, there was that sense of emptiness. And I was already in that mental space of just feeling, you know, really, I know I don't like to use the word depressed, but I mean, clinically, that's what it is. Like just my body had slowed down, my brain had slowed down. And I had a moment, and then I came to visit you, which was great. And I got some sunshine. But the funny thing was I was kind of counting on that time to like boost me for the rest of the season. And, you know, for whatever reason, it didn't. I mean, I had a great time, but I came home like instantly right back where I was, of just feeling, you know, unsure. I didn't understand kind of how how to proceed in life. And I had a really, really hard couple of weeks, and I all of a sudden realized, oh, this is depression. This is what I've had all my life. And I just had a new understanding of the urgency of asking for help, asking for support. And I did have a moment about a month ago where I'm like, this is not okay. Nobody should feel like this. This is not it. And like, I gotta find some way to get out of this. And one of the hardest things, and we will talk about depression at some point in our mental wellness. But you know, that's been my work. But I think this winter for me really brought a new perspective. Like I've always kind of professed, you know, the importance of self-care, and you know, I suffer from winter depression every year, and this is what I do, and these are my strategies. And then it shows up, and I feel like I feel like I'm totally alone in this. Like nobody knows what I'm feeling. Nobody could possibly help me, and I have no way out. And then very slowly, it's all of a sudden I realize, you know, this is why I created this body of work that I've been studying, of like getting in touch with my body. How is my body feeling? Responding to it, listening to it, trusting it. And I think a big support for me through the winter was our podcast. And you specifically as a friend, but also what we're creating, this thing, this forum for us to come together and talk and be real. And I think we had a conversation, I don't even remember when it was. It's probably about a month ago or so.
2 weeks ago,
It was when I was really feeling that deep depression. And I reached out to Bethany, and I'm like, why are we doing this? I don't understand. I just really had lost touch with everything. And it
was a hard conversation because it triggered me. Cause I like, I don't know. We could both talk about our experience there. Like, there's an asset, and the reason it shows up in me this way is because I do it to myself, and it was done to me as like, just, you know, what's wrong? Like, you know, like just deal with it. Just, you know, like not really having that compassion or that full empathy for like what the other person is experiencing, even though I experienced the same things, but just like it's like we weren't experiencing it at the same time. And I was kind of just like in that mindset of like, well, I need to make money, or I need to, you know, stay on track. I need to have this structure for myself. And it comes across as really insensitive and invalidating. And then also, but I think it was like the way you were like talking to me, I in my mind turned it into like, there's something wrong. Like, or what's she trying to tell me? What's wrong? What am I doing wrong? What is wrong with our podcast? She doesn't want to do it anymore. Like, and so then I get into that heightened state of like, now our partnership has to end. And I was literally like thinking, she's going to come back the next day and tell me she doesn't want to do this anymore. And so I was thinking like, well, what are we going to do? What am I going to do? Am I going to keep doing, you know? So that's where I was going with it. Cause I noticed that about myself, and also with like dating too, is that
Yeah.
I sometimes don't, I automatically go to like, oh, I guess it just has to end then, rather than the working together of like talking about what can we do differently? What can we do instead? I always automatically think, oh, they're going to stop. They're just going to leave. They're like the abandonment thing.
Yeah.
So that's what happened for me, at least, when we, but I think we were both doing our best not to be in our stuff while still having like a conscious conversation, but yet we're
Yeah.
still in our stuff. Yeah.
It was, and it's not easy. And and this is, a public service announcement of, vulnerability and courage. Like, we stuck with it. And I feel really good with where we are now, because we're both able to really express ourselves and to say those things. Like, you said, I need to keep doing this podcast. And that just gave me that belief that you were, that you were invested in it too.
Right.
And I was invested, but I had lost touch with it. And it was just, again, we went deep.
Yes, we did.
And we unpacked it all. And it was right at the height of both of us dealing with some, difficult things. And as a result of that, we were able to move through to like, how do we want this to go next? And
right.
that, and we'd kind of been talking a little bit about, having seasons.
Yeah.
Just because, we are seasonal goddesses.
Creatures. Yeah, I was gonna say creatures.
Yes. And, we work in cycles, and we're both really creative. And I think part of what serves us in this podcast is the idea of reinvention, rebirth, creating something new from what we've built on, and getting clearer and clearer each season.
Yeah, totally.
So anyway, but yeah, so after our conversation, but around that same time, when I kind of identified, I'm like, oh, hey, this is one of those times when I have to ask for help and tell somebody how I feel. My husband is wonderful. That was the other side thing. You were moving. My husband was getting his dream job, which is a big learning curve. And it was a huge adjustment for both of us, with schedule and with just kind of the way he operates in life. And, he made a big commitment to create a new life for himself. And this was kind of the final piece, if you will, like the final big piece coming in. So, just supporting him and making sure that our relationship was serving us both.
Right. Yeah.
Which, that was also a thing for me, juggling. So,
right. Well, I think like for both of us, it was about how do you be with all of your stuff and then still be in partnership with people whose lives are different than yours, like even if it's your partner. So it's like for me, it's mostly like my son, and like how to still operate in to where, because like we can't just completely shut down and shut ourselves off and go into a cabin in the woods and not talk to people for 2 months, even though I wish that I could.
Yeah, me too.
No offense to anybody, but but like how to still be in partnership and meet needs that people, I guess, need from you at times, while you're still trying to meet your own needs, and then also being open. I think you and I both struggle with being open to like asking for support and receiving it. That was one thing that I was like saying when we were having our difficult conversation. I was like telling you like, well, it sounds like you maybe need to like talk to somebody, like, get support. And I'm always like, I'm here for you, whatever you need. But I noticed that you were kind of resistant to actually like, like talking to me about it, despite the fact that we're pretty close, and which was fine. I wasn't going to push it, but
I mean, I didn't talk to my husband about it, even though he like checks in with me daily, because he's lived with me and he knows that this happens every year.
Exactly.
And I kept saying, I'm fine. And really it comes from me not wanting to have to address that.
Yeah.
Like, I don't want to deal with it. And I know that nobody else wants to deal with it. Until, you get to that point where it's like, oh, wait, I have to.
Yeah. Well, definitely. I think I was similar in that I push myself too much to where I don't let myself rest. And it's like, I think you close yourself off a little bit, you know, like when you're like that. And so I'm like, I force myself to just do things instead of like just chilling and like, you know, relaxing, maybe getting support somehow. Yeah. So it shows up, you know, just differently for everybody, you know, I think. And in our society, sometimes it's hard not to get caught up in that like do mentality.
Oh, for sure.
And operate over top of how you really feel, you know?
Yeah.
Like, so.
Yeah. And also the idea that no matter what you do, it's never enough.
Yes. Oh,
that's a big one too.
Yeah.
And those are all universal themes. But, you know, for us, I think, you know, with the winter and what our podcast was helping us to not only share with other people, but to experience for ourselves was, you know, the deeper you go, that, you know, it gets messy, it gets difficult, but there's so much growth to be had there.
Yeah.
And I am now coming into spring with a whole new appreciation for life in general, for the value of all of the work that I have done, not only on myself, but on learning about self-care and movement practices, meditation, all those things. Although I will tell you, the only time I have meditated in the last, 2 months has been when I'm actually in a yoga class. I still have a really hard time carving that out for myself at home, but you know, never say never.
Yeah. You know, we all find our own ways to meditate. Like I know you cook a lot, you know?
Yeah, that is
like
very meditative. Cooking and cleaning sometimes.
Yeah, exactly. Like if sometimes I think, you know, we have to, our bodies need to physically be doing something in order for us to process. I notice my son is a lot like that. He's a very, I guess in early childhood, we call it like a kinesthetic learner. You know, so there's different types of learners. And sometimes I need to do that too. In order to take in information, I need to be able to like move my body. And that's what meditating is, right? It's like we're opening the space to get, you know, to bring that divine messages, you know, the messages in. So for me, it's driving too. So.
Yeah. I was going to say going for long walks because the walk outside my door, I mean, it's pretty flat. It's a steady 4% grade because it used to be a railroad track. I know that randomly, but it's
more, you know.
Oh my gosh.
Sorry.
No, it's just funny. I had somebody yesterday, I don't even remember who it was, and we were talking about, it was Charlene, and she's like, I want you on my Trivial Pursuit.
Right.
And I'm like, I know a lot of random stuff about stuff. She's like, yeah, but you know a lot.
You go on Jeopardy.
Not that it's helpful. But anyway. So, you know, what has come from that for the podcast is this venture that we are going on Patreon, doing a new moon and full moon practice. Both Bethany and I are sharing our gifts and what we are learning about ourselves and how we're learning to get our message to the world through tarot and through movement practices. You know, that has me really excited. And the idea of creating this virtual intentional community where people can come on and support us financially, but support the community financially so that we can get you know, more and deeper messages out there and get more people involved. So one thing that I see for us in the coming months in spring is hearing more from other people, because we have been doing this a lot. Bethany and I reach out to our communities and we bring them on, and we've had a couple of people from, you know, we had someone from Sweden, someone from England, you know, we've got people from all over who are offering their wisdom, and we'd love to hear from people who are listening so that we can you know, craft our message to what people want to know. Because, you know, I could talk about cooking all day or, you know, essential oils, but if nobody's interested in that, and there's 100,000 other podcasts out there. So, you know, we really want to create a community of women that are really curious and want to know more about tarot, about earth magic, about what it means to be a woman, what it means to be wild. woke.
Yeah, exactly. And if we hear from you guys or listeners about what you want, we can then find people to interview, who are the best experts in those topics to give you the resources, the tools, the experience, the knowledge that you're looking for.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I love that. I think what I love about how we've created it is we've just used this loose structure of recording ourselves and the topic, and then we allow whatever wants to come out within that come out. And that's kind of how we designed our entire podcast. So,
Yes.
and what's funny is that as it's starting to evolve, you realize how we've been guided and like unconsciously setting things up like that, right? Like with the artwork that you created, and you're like, oh, look, I do this thing. And, and then it was like, I think that was where we got the inspiration for or I don't remember how, I think you had the inspiration for we should do seasons, we're talking about actual, going with the actual seasons within the year, winter, spring, summer, autumn. And I don't know, I notice how everything is kind of has been set up for us, but we haven't even really realized it. We're just picking up, it's like putting together a puzzle, and we're picking up pieces, and it's slowly coming together, and we get these inspirations and these ideas of oh, we should have a theme, and it should be diving deep, because what are we doing in winter? We're diving deep, and just little things like that. And even to I mentioned this in our last recording, I think, is to me, finding this backdrop for myself, because I was I'm looking for a partition to have behind me, because now my office is in my closet, and I don't want everyone looking at my stuff.
Yeah, and don't be fooled, everybody. Her closet is as big as a bedroom.
It's gigantic and it's amazing. So anyways, even things like that, to where finding this, which has the representations of the seasons on it. So this is spring and this is summer. Just little tiny pieces like that, where everything just seems to be coming together to be perfect, and just wow, this is really what we're supposed to be doing. And it's still at that point where we have no idea what it's going to become, or how big it's going to be, or how, what we're meant to actually do with it, what the impact it's supposed to have. We can see little snippets of it, but we kind of just go with that. We go with when we get that inspired action, creativity, that action, that inspired idea, and we just kind of take it that way. And I feel like that's what being open and being creative is all about.
Yeah.
So yeah, we're springing forward, and the perfect
Woo-hoo.
time. Spring is all about creating, right? Or birth. It's about birth, fertility. We talked a lot about we talked about fertility in our last episode. So it's kind of transitioning us into this new phase. And so resilience and rebirth is our theme for spring.
Yes.
Ta-da! You're the first to know.
The big reveal.
The big reveal. Yeah, I know you guys were on the edge of your seats.
Yeah.
But it's playing into, and we talked about that a few weeks ago, right? And then now we're seeing how it's playing into what's happening globally at the moment.
Oh my gosh,
So it's little things like that, to where because we're intentionally asking for this inspiration for what we're creating, is then we see how it is becoming what people are going to be experiencing, and that the support may be needed here, or that, the information we're talking about will be needed at some point, even if it's not right when we're recording it or right when it's posted,
Yeah.
So everything always comes together.
I agree. Yeah. So what's next? We're moving into spring. Resilience, rebirth, fertility. We just had a podcast with my cousin about fertility.
Mm-hmm.
And we're going to continue in that vein. Women's fertility, as women in their childbearing years. I also want to, this isn't all just about, birth of humans, because I know there are a lot of feminines out there that's not a chosen path for them.
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of, chosen or an option.
Yeah.
I know there are men that listen to this podcast.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Who may not feel, they may feel very comfortable in their masculine and very present in their masculine, but this is an opportunity for them to check in with their feminine. And, I think there's a lot to be gained from men talking about what does fertility mean to them, because men have a part to play in the fertility cycle.
That they
and
do.
and the masculine has a part to play in the fertility cycle, the energy
Mm-hmm.
of the energy that it takes to grow new things, that is
Yeah.
considered masculine energy.
Well, yeah, so in a masculine energy is like the sun energy, right? And
Yeah, yeah,
so
yeah.
we need sun in order to grow plants. If we're looking at it with the,
Or
I mean,
humans.
also humans, yes, we do need that to thrive, I should say.
Yeah.
Thriving, I'd say you could probably grow without it, but who knows how big like how healthy you'd be. Anyway, so
Well, yeah.
yeah,
And everybody eats plants. So
yes, exactly.
even if you're a carnivore, you're eating an animal that was eating a plant.
Exactly. I love that. What was I going to say? Oh, and so I do my, oh gosh, it got really like weird, the sound. Anyways, it went away. I do my journaling for my cycles, like almost pretty much every day. And so from the book Love Your Lady Landscape, she identifies like which phase of your cycle you're in and what it represents. So there's a masculine phase and there's also a feminine phase, and it corresponds with the seasons. And so I was just in my pre-ovulation phase, and just coming, I think I'm in my ovulation phase. I just ovulated, but pre-ovulation is a very masculine phase, which I find funny because like you think like like that's what you need to like get you into that. So like ovulation is the time where you're the most fertile, and you are ready to be implanted, or you're ready to set those intentions, plant those seeds. And if you think about it,
I was just thinking your womb is open for business.
Exactly. And again, this isn't you, and she talks about this in the book too, is that you don't have to be actually making a human. You can be birthing a book, another creative project, whatever it is that you're creating in your life, because we're always creating, whether that's you're making food or you're creating a space, or like you're creating a
work
course
project.
yeah, a work project. Like it can be so many different things. I don't remember the point I was trying to make. Sometimes I go
we're talking about
tangent.
the masculine and the feminine, and we're coming into spring, which whether you are representing masculine or feminine, we will be talking about things like breastfeeding and probably some other early childhood birthing. I would love to talk a little bit about doula work, but also talking about new creative projects and what that brings out for you, what can be gained or what can be learned by taking on a new challenge.
I mean, I would love to even hear a man's perspective of becoming a father, so we're going to talk, of course, about we've had many mothers on here already, but we have such a different experience than men do of becoming a father. And so it would be cool to interview men to see how they've responded to it, how they have changed, because we're talking about rebirth. So they are reawakening aspects of themselves when they become parents. And also resilience too. Like it can be very difficult, and I think especially for men, because I think we've grown this baby, and I don't want to like this is the majority, because there are some mothers who can't seem to handle it emotionally, mentally, whatever, physically, but we've grown the baby, so we're a lot closer to it. Also, the baby needs us more in the very early months than it needs she, I'm saying it needs the father. So there's a very different type of relationship and bonding experience. And so again, I don't remember the point I was going to make right before this, but you get what I'm saying.
As we go
men,
into spring,
I remember. Yes. No, men, they also have to develop a type of resilience for themselves and rebirth aspects of themselves when they become parents. So that was my point.
Very good.
Very good. Great point. We finally got there. Anyway, so that's what we're going to be talking. That's the theme for spring. We have a few ideas, things hopefully lined up, but again, things can change as we move into it. Also, the next week, we're going to have an off week.
Yes, it's celebration week. Yay! And I know, and it's like, don't let this play into your fears.
Yeah, I know, right? That's not why we're doing it. We actually decided to do this before the whole coronavirus stuff. So,
and also, you know, as we are creating podcast content, we're also creating the things that we're up to in life that this podcast supports. So, you know, Bethany has a coaching practice. I have a doula and embodiment practice.
Yes. I also have a teaching job. So
yes. And I also, and I have,
and you have your job that you're possibly, who knows,
yes.
other stuff.
That's a story for another time.
Yeah.
I might be going back.
Right.
So. But, you know, just in creating the life that I envision is my best life.
Yeah.
And it's, and to be, what am I trying to say? To honor the opportunities and the gifts that being receptive to that kind of, you know, divine energy. Sometimes things don't go as planned.
Oh, they have, like, do they ever? Like, I know. Like, there's a small percentage when it does.
Yeah.
So that's what we've noticed too. So when we plan shit, it seems to, like, if it's not going to work out, that was something that had come up. Sorry to interrupt you.
No, go for it.
When we were planning, we were noticing how, like, we try to plan things too far in advance, and then it gets to that, and then we're like, well, things change so quickly, the energy shifts, or, you know, especially with astrological placements, we were noticing that too. You know, there's so many different things that could happen. So we're not trying not to plan too far in advance to allow for that lack of disappointment of, like, we planned this and now we're not gonna be able to do it.
Yeah. And I always like to look at it, and it's perfect for spring. My coach, shout out to Melanie Paez.
Hey, Mel.
She gave me the imagery of, you know, because I am such a creative person and I will come up with a bazillion ideas. I mean, I've literally sat down and just written out random ideas because they just come.
Yeah.
And what she was saying, it's like, you're just like a farmer just sowing seeds. And then I had this image of, like, having a handful of all these ideas and just, like, throwing them out there.
Yeah.
And if I try and throw them out there and then attend to every single one of them, I will go fucking crazy. So why not throw them out there, give them a little love, and see what pops. And so that's kind of when I think about being in the flow and being, you know, following the creation is, you know, letting those ideas out into the wind, let them find purchase. And the ones that keep coming back, the ones that like won't let me rest, or that, you know, I keep getting, you know, I don't know. I'm trying to come up with a quick analogy, but, you know, like when you say, don't think of red cars, or don't look at red cars, and all of a sudden all you see are red cars. It's like, there are ideas that as soon as they're planted, all of a sudden, all these opportunities line up. And,
it's the universe showing you, like, the path of least resistance, basically. Like, this is the direction to go. And you have to be aware of those things, those opportunities, or those signs that you're being given, you know? Right. Yeah, totally.
Right. And, you know, that's part of resilience, is knowing when to bend, knowing when to shift, to know when to swerve, you know?
Know when to give up on something too. Like, or not like give up, but, like, okay, that doesn't seem to be working, you know, or that doesn't
it's not
seem to
serving me now.
Right.
It was a great idea, but, you know, getting my master's degree in midwifery doesn't serve me. I mean, it was a really bright beacon for me 15 years ago, and it landed me exactly where I'm at now. It really did, in every single way. Yeah. And that's not my end goal anymore, but it helped me to get to where I am now, which is, you know, wanting to create opportunities for women and men to come together in community.
Yeah, totally.
And to be supported.
Yeah. Sometimes we don't know exactly what the point is of, you know, where we're going. Like,
it's the point of life.
Well, you know, like we don't realize until after the fact of, like, oh, like this, when you actually get that realization of, like, this is where I'm supposed to be. Like, and then you look at all the events that happened before that to bring you to that place. And you think, like, oh, like at that point I thought it was this, but I wasn't done yet. And I was still being led here. You know, it's all about where you're being guided to go. And it may not make sense during the process or in that moment until after the fact. And you're like, oh, like, this is what I'm supposed to do. You know, that's what I had just mentioned with the podcast, is, like, we're not really sure what this is supposed to be yet. You know, it started as an idea for a retreat and it somehow turned into a podcast, you know? So,
and there's still retreat, you know, there's still
yes.
retreat in the back of my mind. That is one
Yes.
of those seeds that has not let me, has not given me a chance to really sit down with it yet, but yeah, it's still there. Yeah. And, you know, we do want to bring women together in physical form,
yes,
to learn and grow and create community.
Right.
But for now, we are connecting virtually because it's safe and it's appropriate.
Apparently, yes. Now it is the most safe and most appropriate.
Yeah.
Do not isolate yourself from connection.
Yeah. And, you know, Bethany and I are in a perfect position to offer that connection. We are both ontological coaches. We have our own perspectives. We know that there's a huge need for people to feel a sense of purpose, connection, trust.
Yeah. In a safe space to where you're not being like, feeling like you're being taken advantage of, or like, you know, we're trying to just like, which is what, because I feel like people go to like religion or, you know, things like that, those big institutions for that purpose. But unfortunately there's like underlying, like, I don't know, what am I trying to say? You know, what's the word I'm looking for? Oh my God.
I can't read your mind. Sometimes
ulterior motives.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Or just, you know, an opportunity to go unconscious.
Yes.
I think a lot of times when we get into large communities or large group think, or, you know, the status quo, it just gives us an opportunity to shut our brains off and not tap into our own intuition. And so sorry,
I was gonna say lack of responsibility.
Yeah.
Basically.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. And Bethany and I are here to help you stay woke. And tuned into what is your truth.
Right.
And it doesn't have to be the same as her truth or my truth.
Mm-mm.
But if you can feel it and you know it.
Yeah, then that's yours. It's like, that's where your power is. Yeah. Definitely. Yeah. Well, is there anything else we needed to talk about? Oh, logistics of, should we go into like, what's next? So yes, the spring is coming up. We will be posting in a couple of weeks, not next week, but the week after, with our first video for spring, with brand new artwork also that Roxanne gets to create for us. I mean, she doesn't draw, like, you don't draw the actual image, but she colors it, which is beautiful. Yeah. So anyways, spring, resilience, rebirth, and then Patreon. So what's going to be happening there, Roxanne? Why don't you tell us?
Well, we have a paid program on Patreon. It's very low monthly dues, and those dues go towards helping us to create more better quality content. Yeah. And in exchange, we offer some of our, you know, magical witchy wisdom. There's a full moon and a new moon posting, and Bethany does a full moon and new moon card reading. And her card readings are really, if you have never experienced a card reading with Bethany, have one.
Please
go to her website and just, you know, even a 3-card spread. She's just, the way that she reads cards to me, it is intuitive, but it is full of wisdom and it's full of knowledge. And it really is a gift that she gets to connect with the energy that you need to hear. And all of her card readings that I've ever had have just been like really affirming and curious. So, you know, so often what you say, I'm like, oh, okay, that was what I was that's what I was feeling. And I just couldn't quite put my fingers on it. Or validating, like, oh, I knew that was coming up, and look, you know, here it is. Yeah. And then you're welcome. And then I do a full moon and new moon embodiment practice. And that is, it's really a great way for me to share my knowledge of body mechanics, but also the value of connecting with our bodies and how our bodies move. Being a fitness professional for 6 years and an athlete all my life have given me a lot of insight into what my body is telling me and the repercussions of not listening to it.
Yes. Yeah.
So
Having
So
not, go ahead. I was gonna say, having not been in that, like the fitness, like I've never been one to like go to the gym and work out or be into like fitness classes. I really love hearing all of the experience and the wisdom and just like the little tips and tricks you have. Like just in watching that new moon video and just like, or the use of the tennis balls, like you told me about the like 2 tennis balls in a sock. And I'm like, oh my God, this is the best thing ever. It's just like little
magic.
things, or like little things that I can take and do at home and not
Mm-hmm.
have to go spend a bunch of money and like a monthly subscription and go to a class or a gym or something is so helpful for me. And the way that you explain it, like you get, like, I love how detailed you get, because I know we talked about this before, is like you're like, I could sit there and I could just get so detailed into, like, I geek out on that stuff personally, because I'm like, oh my God, I didn't know what that muscle was called, and I didn't know it was connected to that part of my body, and I didn't know that, oh, like, like learning about the body for me has been a really big theme also this year, like having friends that are massage therapists also. So anyways, and I think you do a great job of getting really detailed and clear and concise, and bringing in the perspective of like, collectively, this is what's happening with the energy. So how it may be showing up in your body, or how to alleviate that stress or that pain or that feeling in your body.
Yeah. Yeah. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And I love doing that. And so, yeah, we are moving more of our energies and efforts over onto Patreon. If you're currently watching this on YouTube, we'll still be on YouTube for a while.
Mm-hmm.
And if you're listening to this podcast on one of your favorite podcast apps, you'll still be able to listen to it. But eventually, I do believe we're going to move everything over onto Patreon, and you can
Yes.
still watch and listen for free.
Yeah, to the ones that we would normally post on YouTube and on PodServe, we just want everything to be in one place so that we don't have to put all of our stuff in multiple different places, kind of like leaks our energy.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, it's just a way to have everything in one place. You still get to listen to the weekly stuff for free. And then we talked about our new moon and full moon videos, but we also, if you haven't listened to it, we have our we are calling them deeper dives for winter, was where after each interview, Roxanne and I then have like a 30 or longer minute, at least 20, to maybe 45-minute chat about the topic, coming from an ontological perspective of what we just interviewed our guest about. And we try to give you guys a lot of resources. That's another thing too that we will be having, is like a PDF with all the resources. And that's eventually, like I said, we're still learning and putting our energy into it as much as possible. The more feedback we get from you guys and what's helpful,
Yes.
the more energy that we can put into it. The more patrons we get who are, like I said, yes, it's helping us financially, but it's actually just an energy exchange, so that if we know that what we're putting into it is helpful and it's actually impacting people, that will then want to put more into it. It's about that reciprocity. So if we're not getting anything back, we're not really going to have the energy to put more into it. So anyways, our goals are the PDF with resources, whether that's books, audiobooks, YouTube videos, or just other people to follow. What else? Card decks when we talk about cards.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. I think that's it so far.
Or just
other resources.
A great place to go to get, to go deeper into whatever subject matter we have. Right. The other thing too, that as we get more feedback from more people, these post-interview chats will be a great opportunity for Bethany and I to address some questions that might have come up in the interview that either we didn't get a chance to respond to, or it might have sparked a curious question from one of our listeners that's like, could you tell us more about that?
Right.
And we can expand on that as well.
Right. So go ahead. I was gonna say, right now we post our post-interview conversations 2 days after the interview, but if we're getting a lot of feedback, we are maybe flexible with when we post the post-interview, so that we can actually answer your questions that you bring in. That might be something fun to do, like to shift it into spring and summer, is actually using your questions as our post-interview conversation.
I would love that.
Yeah.
So send us questions, send us thoughts, send us ideas.
Yeah.
And, we are both checking Instagram and Facebook and the YouTube responses.
Yeah, we've been getting some good comments lately, or a couple of comments on our videos. So that's awesome. We love hearing that.
Yeah. Or email us directly.
Yes. We both have checked that daily also. Yeah. Let's see. I think, was that everything we wanted to cover?
I think think so.
I believe so.
So happy spring, y'all. Celebrate.
Yeah.
Take some time next week to really tap into gratitude. I don't know if you're watching this in 2020 or if this is somebody in 2050 that's
Ooh,
looking
that would be
back into
cool.
history.
Hey.
Who knows,
Right? Who knows how long this will be on the internet?
Yeah, but we're all being made to pay attention to our health and wellness and to our communities.
Yep.
And I think this is it's a beautiful time for us to really take a look at how we take care of each other.
Yeah.
And how we take care of ourselves, and like truly with love and with compassion, and with a sense of security. We want to make sure everybody's safe and healthy. And from that perspective, I think we have a lot of amazing things that we can all learn and grow from in this time of uncertainty.
Absolutely. We're kind of being forced into isolation, but we don't have to completely isolate ourselves from connection. We have our virtual abilities. And we lived with loved ones. Most people live with other people. So, that's good too. It's just about being mindful, being aware, being mindful about how you're taking care of yourself. And I think it's a lot about seeing how everything is interconnected, how we're all affected by each other, no matter where you are on the planet, and that what we do affects other people. And like looking at it in a small scale, it's like, obviously if you cough and you don't cover your mouth, like you see like that you affect other people in your environment. But on a larger scale, your energy and what you're doing with your energy is going to affect people on a larger scale across the globe. So, just be mindful of that your behavior, your decisions has consequences, whether those are positive or negative, depending on how you're looking at it, but it affects everybody around you, whether you like it or not.
Whether you want to admit it or not.
Exactly. And it doesn't have to be a shameful thing. It just has to be a ownership thing, taking responsibility for your choices.
Yeah.
And with that, we will leave you.
But just for a little while.
Yes.
We'll be back in the spring and look forward to what is next.
Yes. All right. Well, thank you guys so much for joining us. We will see you in a couple of weeks, or you will hear us in a couple of weeks. And until next time, stay wild.
Bye.
Bye.